Good evening, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining this special webinar when love feels heavy. There's an entire backstory as to how this topic even came about in the first place, and certain scenarios that have propelled me to do this. This is the month of May 2025, so that anytime you're going to rewatch this, you remember when this happened. But sometime between January and now, I've had to deal with certain cases that are primarily centered around guilt. And I think it's important that I bring this to the forefront so that we can tackle it because there seemed to be a common thread around the cases I've been working on, and I just thought to do this. So, again, thank you for coming to this webinar when love feels heavy. My name is TBOG. Well, Temitope Omar Kalen, but I'm fondly called TBOG. Now, who is TBOG? I am the co-founder and managing partner of T-Sage and TBOG Consult, a family and workplace wellness outfit. Um, I had my first and second degree from the prestigious University of Lagos in physiology. In human physiology, I beg your pardon. And then I'd gone on to take some certifications in social psychology, developmental psychology, clinical psychology from the University of Queensland, Australia. Right. I also have some certifications in emotions management from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. I am the co convenor of Imagine Nigeria 2050. I'm an alumna of the Cherry Blair Foundation for Women and the Latif Jakande Leadership Academy. In a nutshell, Tibog is someone who has moved from the sciences to the social sciences and is bringing in a blend of both. And it's beautiful to see how my physiology intertwines with my psychology to help me deliver value to you. So I'll just go on right now to our learning objectives. The very first thing I want us all to understand from this particular conversation we're having is what guilt is. I need you to know what guilt is because guilt in itself is not entirely a bad thing. Yeah, guilt is not entirely a bad thing. It's the processing of guilt that brings about what is good and what is bad. And we'll understand it as we go on subsequently. I also want us to identify specific areas in our family roles where guilt may be shaping decisions or interactions. So initially, I wanted to do this for parents alone, but then the cases I've been dealing with were not just centered around parents. Some were centered around, parent-child. Some were centered around siblings. Some were centered around friendship, and basically, it's all about relationship. And as people would say, family is not just by blood. Yeah, the blood of covenant is actually really, really thicker than anything else. Um, as part of our learning objectives, I would also like us to explore practical strategies to set loving boundaries without shame or emotional withdrawal. I'd also like us to begin a personal journey of self compassion. We need to learn to release unrealistic expectation, which, by the way, is an offspring or is what birth some kinds of guilt we experience, and to also forgive oneself for not being everything to everyone. And you'll find out as we go on that sometimes the origin of guilt is because you're trying to be everything to everyone, and it's not possible. I mean, imagine you buy a pen and you want your pen to be an eraser, you want it to be a ring, you want it to be your cloth, you want it to be your necklace, you want it to be your TV. It's not possible. And when the pen is not able to meet that demand, the pen can go into guilt mode. Oh my God, my owner bought me, but I could not become TV to my owner. That's so sad. And that's how guilt creeps in. You cannot be everything to everyone. It's not possible. And the earlier we understand and accept that, the better for us. And then finally, I would like us to engage in open reflection and conversation about unspoken emotional burdens in family life in a safe and judgment space. Now, and judgment free space, I beg your pardon. And now, this is a class we've held the first time in a very private zone, but there has been demands for me to open it up for others to learn from, and so I'm having to redo this for us to learn from. So one thing I'll just beg of you is that some of the platforms I will just post this on, you may not be able to get real time engagement from me. But what I can promise you is that at the end of this presentation, my email address and phone number will be on your screen, and I would look forward to treating some of these things with you. Who knows, by the next time we'll be having a webinar like this, some of those answers, may have inspired me to, you know, do another webinar that can also reach out to more persons, because the goal is to get as many people healed as possible. So I'll begin with this story. I've tweaked it a bit so that I can protect the identity of the person, but the core of the story is still the same. So some months ago, I had a conversation with a woman that we're calling Sarah, of course. She's a mother, she's a wife, she's a big C-suite executive in a very, very big organization. Definitely married, and she still has her mother alive. Her mother is really old, and Sarah is the one who's caring for her mother, right? So on the outside, when people see Sarah, they see a superwoman. I don't even have another word to use to describe it. They see a superwoman. They see a woman who is smashing goals in the workplace in a male dominated field. I need to add that. They see a woman who is mothering, right? Because when Sarah's three children are paired, they are epitomes of respect, right? They are morally grounded. And for someone who is wealthy, there's this bias that wealthy children are usually spoiled and all, but not Sarah's children. Her children are prim and proper, the proper definition of morally blessed children. Right, and Sarah herself is not bad. She looks really good for a married woman. I mean, she's really good. She's working full time, like I said earlier, as a C-suite executive. She has a mom who is really old, very close to 100, and demands a lot of care. And so everybody just looks at Sarah as a superwoman, the woman who does it all and is excelling in all. Right, but in one of our sessions, Sarah said something that really made me pause and ponder. And it was an outcome of that meeting that made me realize that, okay, this is one time too many. I need to have a conversation with people on how to handle guilt, how to even identify it in the first place. And she said, I feel guilty for wanting to be alone. That's something I could easily relate with, but I feel guilty, right? And she meant it. She loved her children. She loves them. She loves oh my God, she really loves her husband, right? She loves her mom. But she feels like as she's pouring herself into everything and everyone, she's losing herself because she's trying to put up a front that she's a strong woman. And every time she takes out time to just want to recalibrate, she feels guilty. She asks herself, what kind of mother am I that I want to be separate from my children? Or what kind of daughter am I that I'm saying, I don't want to be around my mom. I just want my me time. Or am I a selfish wife for needing quiet? These are the kinds of things Sarah was dealing with. She didn't have a problem on how to love her family. She already did. But what she needed to learn is how to love herself without that accompanying guilt. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why we are here today. Because so many of us, especially in our culture, Africa, where we have been taught that real love means always being around, always being present, always being available, always giving of yourself, always saying yes, always never ever needing a break. Needing a break is equal to being lazy, but that's not the truth. The truth is, love can be really deep, really deep, and healthy. Family should always feel like home, not like a heavy weight or a weight on your chest. And so, what is guilt? I'm going to ask you, at this time, I hope you are with your pen and with your notepad, because we're going to be doing a lot of back and forth. And I'm also looking in the comment sections to see what you're also saying to me, just in case you're not with your book. So, yeah, what is guilt? Guilt is the emotional response we feel. Underline it. Emotional response we feel, feel, feel. So, guilt is the emotional response we feel when we believe we've done something wrong or failed to meet a certain standard, whether real or perceived. Please underline whether real or perceived. So let's do it again. Guilt is the emotional response we feel when we believe we've done something wrong or failed to meet a certain standard, whether real or whether perceived. So if I will take out all the words and just leave what's underlined, I can just say guilt is the emotional response we feel, whether real or perceived. Whether real or perceived. And it's important to know that because sometimes what's happening is not real, is what we've perceived. And the body has a very difficult time differentiating between your imaginations and the actuality, right? Your body will respond the same way. And that's why if you were happy, you just watch the rom-com, you're excited, and you just sit down and think about a nasty episode you had with someone, your mood changes, you become angry and all. Your body does not remember that all it's doing is thinking. Your body visualizes it and it becomes a reality even though it's perceived, and you switch into anger for no reason. So remember, real or perceived. We feel real or perceived. So now there are two types of guilt. There's the healthy guilt, and believe me, like I said at the beginning when I was talking about our learning outcomes, guilt is not bad in itself because it can serve as a moral guide for us. So the healthy guilt is also called moral guilt. And that's what helps us recognize when we've genuinely hurt somebody, when we have genuinely hurt somebody, right? Or you violated a value we hold dearly, right? So healthy guilt comes when you've genuinely hurt someone or when you violated your values. So if you're a person of integrity and you told a lie, guilt can come in. How could you have done that? Right? But this kind of guilt always leads to three things. It leads to an apology, it leads to repair, and it leads to growth. The outcome of healthy guilt will always lead to something constructive. And that's something I need you to always remember, right? It will always, 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 always lead to something constructive. It will lead you to apology, it will lead you to repair, it will lead you to growth. But then there's the second, which is toxic guilt. We also call it chronic guilt. And that's the guilt you carry even when you've done nothing wrong. I'll take it again. Chronic guilt or toxic guilt is what you carry when you've done nothing wrong. And it's often rooted in unrealistic expectations, people pleasing, or fear of judgment. So when I say unrealistic expectations, remember my analogy of the pen that wants to become everything to everyone. It wants to become a TV, it wants to become a laptop, it wants to become a phone, it wants to become a power bank, it wants to become a frame, it wants to become the freezer, right? And because it cannot become that, it becomes guilty, right? It sets itself, it has rooted itself in unrealistic expectations. And that's sometimes what we do. We are business women, businessmen, family men, family women. We have responsibilities at church, so our family, our siblings, immediate family, extended family. And then it gets to a point you just want to take a break. You just want to go on a vacation, just you, to just, recalibrate. And then you begin to feel guilty because a good wife should not leave her children, or a good husband should always be present. Do you understand? It's unrealistic. There's an analogy I like to give. I don't have my cup here. But imagine I'm holding a glass of water, and then three people come to me to beg for water that, oh, they're really thirsty. And I pour my cup of water into those three glasses. I've depleted the content of my cup. If I do not go back to refill, a time will come I will have nothing left to pour. that is going to be a problem. But so that I do not get to that point where there's nothing for me to share with you anymore, I need to keep going back to get more water. I need to keep going back to refill, right? So every time you realize that you're getting emotionally spent, you don't have to feel guilty for wanting to go back to refill, to refuel, to recalibrate. You don't have to. It becomes unrealistic expectations, or it becomes an unrealistic expectation when you feel guilty for wanting to pour water back into your cup. And then there's a place of people pleasing. I think I need to have another webinar entirely on people pleasing, how it starts, how you identify, and how you can nip it in the bud. This is something I have also experienced, and so I would even speak. I'll be speaking to you on practical terms, and this is something that I've also have had reasons to engage clients on. So that I think that's an interesting webinar we should have. Perhaps that will be the next one. So just stay very very connected to T-Sage and TBOG on all our social media platforms so that you won't miss out on the announcement when it comes out. Because one of the things I do is, because of the sensitivity of what we do and the room it creates, I usually don't do a lot of ads about it. I just leave it for those who are genuinely interested to find it and come in, because I enjoy a class of 10, a class of 5, a maximum class of 20. I don't think I've ever, for webinars that are this sensitive, where I know that I want people to come and talk about their own situations, and I prefer solutions to it. I usually like to keep that class small, because the smaller the class, the higher the chances of um you not knowing somebody else in that class, which is one of the reasons people don't talk publicly about what they're going through, right? But I'm trying to do some webinars also that can be broadcasted to everybody, so that I don't deprive people of what they need to know. So, anyways, so this toxic guilt is rooted in unrealistic expectations, people pleasing, and the fear of judgment. So, you don't want somebody to say that you're a bad son. So, when you feel the need to just take a break from caring for your aging mom or dad, you're scared of being judged. And so you still stay. And then you end up burnt out. I know the story of someone personally who walked herself to death. And I'm not speaking figuratively, I'm speaking actually, literally. She walked to the point of exhaustion. Her heart couldn't stand it. And she gave up. But I don't want that to happen to any of us. We are more useful when we are alive. And so the father, the mother, the brother, the sister, the friend that you are afraid of getting being judged from, when you pass, you've left them here to hurt, right? But they're still here. Someone else will have to step in to take care of them. So why not take breaks as often as you need them, so that you always be here to keep taking care of them? Do you understand that? Okay. So the truth is, guilt is not always a sign of wrongdoing. Sometimes it's just a sign that you're human. And I want this to sink into your mind, because it's possible to feel guilty for feeling guilty. Did you catch that? It is possible to feel guilty for feeling guilty. And so I need you to remember that guilt is not always a sign of wrongdoing. That you feel guilty does not mean you've done something wrong. Sometimes it's just a sign that you are a human being. Embrace your humanity. The truth is, you are allowed to love deeply, really deeply, and still need rest, boundaries, or space. In fact, love thrives when there's boundary. Love thrives when you rest. Love thrives when there's space. Why do you say someone is stalking you? Or why do you say someone is obsessed with you? It's because the person is showing love to you deeply, at least by that person's standards. The person loves you deeply. It's just that the person is not giving you space. And so it becomes uncomfortable to you. Good love, pure love, allows you to love deeply, allows you to rest while loving deeply, allows you to create your boundary while loving deeply, allows you space while loving you deeply. Even God Almighty does not force us to love Him back. He gives you space, He gives you boundaries, He gives you opportunity to choose if you want to reciprocate the love or not. How much more we, right? So always remember the truth is that you are allowed to love deeply and still want space and still want boundaries and still want rest. In fact, I recommend it deeply. God loves us, but on the seventh day, Baba rested. Why won't you rest? Why won't you take time out to recalibrate so that when you come back, you're bringing your best game, right? And again, one more truth I'm going to share here is that you're allowed to care without carrying everyone. You cannot be all things to everyone. I need you to, in fact, say after me, I, you're not saying it. I, exactly. I, Temitope Oluwa, Esther Omoakalen, TBOG, cannot be everything to everyone. I am allowed to care without carrying everyone. And I need you to feel comfortable with that truth. I need you to feel really comfortable with that. Because, yes, you are allowed to care without carrying everyone. In fact, the minute you begin to carry everyone, even the people you care about, you're going to drop them. It's only a question of time. There's only so much you can do. I mean, even the strongest bodybuilder in the world cannot carry everyone. I watched a video of a young man, a bodybuilder who was pushing a truck. And I said to myself, oh, this guy can really push a truck. But if I will bring him into this context, he can push a truck while pushing an aeroplane, while pushing a tanker, while pushing a house, while he will collapse under that weight. Carry based on your capacity at the moment. Expand your capacity so you can carry more, but don't carry more than you can handle so you don't snap. For the science students who are here, I'm sure you've heard about Hooke's law of elasticity. I cannot quote it verbatim now, but the principle around Hooke's law is that an elastic object or an elastic item will stretch, and as long as it's within its elastic limit, when you release it, it will go back to its original position. But when you stretch it beyond its elastic limit, it will never return to how elastic it was before. It becomes loose. And at home, these are things you've seen. We have rubber bands, we have elastic items at home. You find out that a time comes when you stretch out those elastic items beyond what is required of them, they do not go back to what they used to be. And that's what this is. If you do not carry within your capacity, you will stretch to a point where you are likely to break. And we don't want that to happen now, do we? So, understanding family guilt, and it's in three parts. The first part is, where does guilt come from? Number one, guilt comes from cultural conditioning. Have you ever heard it being said that good mothers never say no? The first time I ever heard that, I laughed. Good wives always cook. When they, and they cook daily, they cook fresh meals, they don't use microwave and all. I've had all kinds of interesting things, for lack of a better word. And it helps realize why women are constantly burning out, because culturally, the odds are not in our favor. Let me give you an analogy. So I have my phone here, and I'm sure we all have our phones. In fact, some of you are listening to me from your phones. And from the beginning of the word communication, long before the kind of technology we have now existed. We had this method of communicating where somebody will put this item on their ear this side. It's connected by a thread. Then the person on the other end will hold on to it, and then they can speak to each other through that. I hope you remember that, because the first time I ever saw it was in a cartoon. I used to watch cartoon as someone in primary school. So that was the first time I saw that. Oh, so communication used to happen there, no, but this was how it used to happen. And then we evolved into all kinds of telephones, right? Even to the one where it's a landline, you roll it, and then you call. We moved to the Motorola, the one with a very long antenna. We used that. We moved to the Surgeons, my X5, my X6, my X this. We moved to the Nokia 3310. We moved to the phones have been evolving. Now we are on Android, we have the iPhone, a time is coming, maybe phones will just be chips. It has been evolving. But one thing has stayed the same, right? Communication has stayed the same. The goal has always been communication. But the manner in which communication is happening has changed. Now you don't even need to do a voice call anymore. You can use text. Your message will go. You can use your emails. It will go. You can Skype things, video calls. These were things that never used to happen. But now we have video calls. Culture is the culture of communication is still constant. The methodology in execution has changed. Do you get that? The way you will handle a Nokia 3310 can never be the same way you will handle a Samsung or an iPhone 16. It's not possible. Their fragility are not the same. The user interface not the same. Nothing about both phones are the same. But the culture of communication is still the same. The end goal, I want person B to hear what person A is saying, is still the same. But what has happened is the cultural conditioning back in the days has not yet caught up with the societal evolution that's going on. And that's a trigger for guilt. Because culturally, when moms, in the family context, moms were never meant to be providers. They were supposed to be homemakers, sit at home and make the home, make the children. But today, anyone practicing that, given the economic situation of things, is a little dicey. And so you find a lot of moms also pulling their weight in the corporate space, in the workplace. And so, if you do not take into cognizance that once upon a time, the reason it was said that women should always cook fresh meals was because women were always available. They were not going out to look for a source of income. If you do not juxtapose that with the current reality, you will still be stuck in cultural conditioning. Not because what has been said is wrong, but because what is being said does not completely fit or align with what is currently ongoing. And so guilt creeps in when you're not able to see what was and what is and try to find that connecting thread without losing values. That is an entry point for guilt. There's also the religious misinterpretations. In fact, one I've always heard for children who are on this call is honor your father and mother. Even for parents on this call, honor your father and mother. Believe me, there is nothing bigger than that commandment because honor will get you far. But I personally have witnessed situations where parents were the predator, And that was what was being quoted to keep the child submissive. Whereas the entirety of that scripture says, children, honor your father and mother in the Lord. In the Lord. So that honor is contingent of them being in the Lord. And being in the Lord means you're doing things that with values. So a father who is predating on his daughter, quoting that same thing to the daughter, if the daughter goes back and sits and says, oh, I am supposed to honor my father, and begins to feel guilty for wanting to break free from that trauma. Are you seeing what's going on? Religious misinterpretations. That's an entry point for guilt. She's not supposed to feel guilty for wanting to break free, but then she'll feel guilty because of religious misinterpretation. Or people who just want to rest and they feel like, if I rest, it means my strength is small. It means I'm not really praying very well. It means A, it means B. Religious misinterpretations. And there are also unspoken family rules, where from the beginning of time, you have always told your child, you must never disappoint me. When this child comes second, this child feels horrible because in their home, they're supposed to be first position all through. Whereas you might not take into cognizance that because this child is intelligent, this child was forced to go to the sciences when all this child wanted was the arts. And so this child is struggling because originally this child was never designed to be in the sciences. But because of this child's intelligence, you forced him in the sciences and this child is struggling there and comes second, but already feels guilty for coming second, not even realizing that for someone who was never supposed to be in the sciences, coming second is a really, really big deal because there are people who were designed to be in sciences that are not coming first, second, third, fourth, fifth. But you did that. That's a huge deal. But this child will never see that because of unspoken family rules. You have to be available 24/7. And so let's say my brother calls me, oh, TBOG, I need you to do ABC. And I say, oh, right now I'm sorry, I cannot help with that, but I'll be able to do it on so and so date, right? My brother may say something like, but you're supposed to be a big sister to me. Why are you doing this? And I can feel guilty for that because I'm supposed to really be the big sister. But should I really feel guilty? Unrealistic expectations, fear of judgment, people pleasing. Do you see how they interplay? And this is how guilt shows up. This is how you identify that this is what's going on. So for parents who have probably worked themselves out, they've been going not entirely at home, not entirely available. What they do is now to overcompensate. I'm not around, but I'm going to buy her a Lexus. I'm not around, but I'll make sure my daughter always has the latest iPhones. I'm not around anytime she asks me for money and I have to give. I'm not around. I'm not going to say no ever to my children. You're overcompensating. That's in parenting. Even in friendship, you're not doing A, so I have to make sure B is always, always going on. Overcompensating is not a good thing. It means you're trying to feed, you're trying to quieten the voice of guilt rather than deal with it. Guilt also shows up when you're burn out from always saying yes. So you're saying yes, yes, yes to everybody all the time at work, at home, and then you're burnt up, and then you feel guilty for getting burnt up. But a lot of times, guilt shows up in that burnout. Suppressing resentment in caregiving. A lot of times, children feel this towards their parents. They have gotten to a point where they are very, very exhausted but they don't want to. And so they get resentful towards the parents. This woman should die now. Let me live my life. What's going on? This is 102. She refused to die. It's been 10 years of catering to her. I'm tired. Da 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 da. And so they suppress resentment. That's how guilt is showing you. I'm right here. And then you want to set boundaries because I've told you, Tibok said, love thrives in boundaries. Love thrives in space. I must set boundaries. And then you're setting it, shame is pouring in. Shame is pouring in because you feel ashamed that you're having to do this. These are some of the ways guilt shows up. And what does guilt do to our wellness? The very first thing guilt attack is our emotions. Guilt attacks the emotions and it causes emotional exhaustion. I promise you, it's something I always treat every time I begin the 101 of living a wholesome life. The dimensions of wellness are independent but also interdependent. And what I mean by that is that when there's a break or a breach in one dimension, it will ultimately affect the other dimensions. I wrote a book sometime in 2019 titled Silent Tears. And that story actually just expatiates on how a break or a fracture in one dimension affects the others. And once that crack happens in the emotional space, it's a question of time. It spills over. It spills. So the very first thing that comes under attack is the emotion. So you guilt attacks the emotions. You get emotionally exhausted. You begin to experience hidden anger or you behave in a very passive aggressive way. You're disconnected from relationships because you're truly, truly exhausted. You feel guilty. You're always on your toes, walking on your toes, trying not to break the eggshells. And you're always in this cycle of constant self questioning. You're always asking yourself, am I a good wife? Am I a good husband? Am I a good friend? Am I a good this? Am I a good that? That's something you're always in that cycle. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. And so I love the quote from Alex L. Alex L says, guilt is the price we pay when we forget that we too are worthy of grace. And that's something I need to take again. It's something I need to sink into our subconscious. I need us to, constantly remind ourselves. Guilt is the price we pay when we forget that we too are worthy of grace. And so, how do we shift the lens from guilt to grace? The very first thing I need you to do is to acknowledge the guilt without judgment. Let me explain what this means. I need you to start asking yourself questions. When you realize that this guilt has crept in, it has come. Instead of you to feel guilty for feeling guilty, allow it and begin to probe. Why do I feel this way? What story am I telling myself about this moment? And this second question is important to answer. Do you know why? It's because whenever guilt comes, there's always a story. There is always a story you are telling yourself about it. There's always. Yesterday, I was supposed to pound yam. I didn't know how to pound yam. I wasn't able to pound yam. I'm a bad wife. Now, what story am I telling myself? What story am I telling myself about this moment? In this moment, I'm feeling guilty and I'm telling myself that I am a bad wife. Why am I a bad wife? Because I could not pound yesterday night. Okay. Is my ability to be a good wife dependent completely on my ability to pound? No. Are there instances in the past where I've done things that have shown that I'm a good wife? Yes. Will this singular incident define me as a good or bad wife? No. Can you see? You're asking questions and you begin to reflect. Ask, oh, so in the last time I did this, this was what happened. Okay, I can pound. There are machines I can use to pound. Perhaps I can buy that. Do you see how probing and asking questions actually helps? The second, I need you to offer yourself compassion. And I intentionally wrote this here because we are our biggest and harshest critic. We judge ourselves worse, far worse than we would do any other person. So please speak to yourself like you are speaking to a friend. If a friend comes to you and say, I'm feeling guilty for ABC, you don't speak harshly to that friend because what you're trying to do is to encourage that friend to come out of what he or she's feeling. So you are your friend. Offer yourself compassion. Talk to yourself. I was doing the best I could at the time with what I knew. Are there things I've done that if I had more information, I would have taken a completely different step? Oh, yes, many times, a lot of times. And would the step I have taken completely change the trajectory of that outcome? Absolutely. Did I take that step? No. Why? I did not have all the information at the time and I needed to make a decision at that time. And so I did the best with the items or with the knowledge I knew at the time. And it's okay. It's okay. It's in further conversations you realize that, oh, okay, if I knew this, this would have changed. If I knew this, this would have changed. Oh, I shouldn't have done this. Maybe, but then you did not have that. Give yourself compassion. It's okay to choose yourself and still love others. I need you to understand that. It is okay to choose yourself and still love others. It is okay to take time off work and treat yourself right. Because I promise you, no matter how busy you are at work, if you do not bring your best game to work, the same people who praise you will humiliate you when you make a mistake. It is human nature. So do not base your worth on people's assessment of you. Don't get me wrong. Listen to feedback, take feedback, work on feedback, but never, ever base your self worth on people's assessment of you. People are fickle, it will change. And so, you that was the star girl or the star boy of an organization, if you allow yourself get burnt out, it's only a question of time before you are relegated and another stardom emerges. You don't want that to be you. So, even when you take out time to, breathe from work, don't be scared to allow all that shine. If anything, it will even rub off positively on you and free you up if others can help with the burden you carry at work. The third, practice compassionate boundaries, saying no with love. This is one of the hardest things to do, to say no, right? And to say it with love. Because as you're saying no, for someone like me, when I began my journey of learning to say no, when I say no, there's a part of my heart that's doing digging, begin, begin, because I'm so terrified. I'm saying no. But I had to learn to say no. Because the reason you can come to me to ask for help is because I am full of help. When I'm drained of help, how will I have any help to offer you? And I'm not talking just money. My listening ears, my compassionate heart, my time, that's help. I should be able to say, oh, I'm working on this very urgent and important task right now. Can you give me 4 hours? In the next 4 hours, I will have, I would give you my complete attention because I don't want to divide my attention between work and you. You deserve all of my attention and I want to give you all. That's a very beautiful way of saying no right now. So you have to learn to say no with love. Then you need to remember this, that healthy love equals mutual responsibility, not constant sacrifice. If you're always the sacrificial lamb or you're the one always sacrificing in every relationship, you're not in a healthy love zone. You are in a toxic love zone. You're in a parasitic love zone. You don't want that. You do not want that. Right? So never forget, healthy love is mutual responsibility, not constant sacrifice. Mutual responsibility, not constant sacrifice. Mutual responsibility, not constant sacrifice. And when I say mutual responsibility, it doesn't always mean it will be 50-50. There are days it will be 70-30. There are days it will be 95-5. There are days it will be 50-50. There are days it will be 40-60. There are days it will be 99-1. There are days it can even be 100-0, but it will not always be 100-0. It must not always be 100-0. Never. If it is a consistent trajectory of 100-0, you are not in a healthy love zone. Walk out. You're not. Whether it's by family, whether it's by friendship, whether it's by whatever relationship. 100-0 all the time, with you giving 100 and receiving 0, it's only a question of time. Have communications with the other party and let them know how you feel. Sometimes what happens is these people don't even know. They've gotten so used to giving that they don't feel they need to make any effort to do. So when you have conversations with people like that, if they are truly worthy of your love, they will step up the game to also meet you somewhere. But if they are not worthy of your love, no matter how many times you request, you will never get it. You will always be 100. You will always be the giver. They would always be the taker, and takers can be really vicious. Again, healthy love equals mutual responsibility, not constant sacrifice. And then again, forgive yourself for moments you weren't perfect. Forgive yourself for moments you weren't perfect. That's human. The very first four portion I spoke about have a lot to do with you not breaching your value gap, or you not, it has a lot to do with the other person. It has a lot to do with unrealistic expectations. It has a lot to do with healthy love. Okay, maybe healthy love is not the word, but it has a lot to do with you. The fault wasn't from you, but there are moments you will make mistakes. There are moments you're going to mess up. and it will cause guilt to seep in. I need you to remember in those moments that you're a human being. If you were not a human being, then perfection would have been your signature. But because you're a human being, we are all striving to perfection. And that's why the different religions would tell you this, do this to get this, right? Because there's always a constant journey. It, perfection is a constant journey. Excellence is a constant journey. That ability to grow is a constant journey. You're constantly journeying to perfection. So it means errors will come in, mistakes will come in. Learn to forgive yourself. You're a human. You are human. You are human. Say, I am human. I am human. To err is human, right? I am human. I am human. And so when I make mistakes, I need to remember that I am human. I need to remember to forgive myself. I need to remember to do better. Don't forget the definition of healthy growth. An outcome of a healthy growth, I beg your pardon, of a healthy love is growth. An outcome of healthy love is growth. An outcome of healthy love is apology. An outcome of healthy love is apology. It is growth. It is you making amends. But an outcome of chronic love, you know, if you let me show you the beginning. Can you see when love, this portion, the love, you can see it's love, or it's carrying a heavy weight. When your guilt begins to crush you, then you know there's an error. You're not letting love do its proper work. And what is proper work? To force you to grow. Love makes you grow. Your learnings from the error makes you grow. Your learnings from the error makes you repair. Your learnings from that error leads you to apology. It does not crush you. When it crushes you, you're no longer dealing with healthy guilt. You've gotten to toxic guilt. And so, this is something I need you to do. I need you to keep a journal where you're asking yourself certain questions, because for some of you that came into this webinar, even before the webinar started, one of the things you had mentioned to me is you want to know how to relate with your family because you're beginning to feel crushed under this guilt. So you're asking yourself a question like, where in my family life does love feel heavy right now? We all know. And I've deliberately tried not to restrict this conversation to parenting because, like I said earlier, it's a relationship thing. So check out your life, especially your family life. And if it's not your family life, makes it even better, it's sweeter, right? So check your life right now. What part does love feel heavy? What guilt are you carrying that no one else sees? You need to journal and chronicle these things. When you've done that, now write your own definition of what healthy love looks like. Are you doing that with me? So you're asking, where in my family does love feel heavy right now? What guilt am I carrying that no one else sees? Then you now write out your definition of what healthy love looks like. What does it look like? What does it feel like? I need you to be able to imagine it. Don't forget what I said. Your body sometimes struggle with differentiating your imaginations from what's real. So once you're able to define what healthy love looks like and feels like for you, send me a mail and let's take it up from there. I will talk with you on how to navigate this. But I need you to do these three things first before we engage in that conversation. And so, in conclusion, you can care deeply and still take care of yourself. I need you to know that caring deeply for others does not automatically translate to giving up on yourself. The fact that you can care for others and still care for yourself is not selfish. That is the actual definition of sustainable love. That is the actual definition of sustainable love. So I thank you all for staying with me. I had promised that I would not take so much time so that we can have quite a lot of time for questions and answers. So, all I just want to see right now in this video is for you to discuss with me what resonated with you the most, what touched you, what struck you. Let me hear you. Just put it in the comment section. And if you have more personal things to talk to me about, That's my WhatsApp number there, and that's my email address. So enjoy the rest of the evening. Bye.